Today we protect one capability without turning the whole application into a maze of role checks. An anonymous caller still receives an authorized. A valid signed-in user can list their own work, but creating a new work item now requires an explicit permission. Without it, the API returns forbidden. With the server-issued work items create permission, the same request returns created and keeps the existing owner scope. This is the smallest useful authorization policy slice: one named rule, one protected endpoint, trusted permission data, and integration tests for every meaningful outcome. Authentication and authorization answer different questions. Authentication builds a claims principle and tells the application which identity is calling. Authorization asks whether that principle satisfies the rule for a particular capability. In ASP.NET Core, a policy gives that rule a stable name. The policy contains one or more requirements, and a handler evaluates them. Our first requirement is built in: the principle must contain a permission claim with the exact value work items create. Endpoint code names the policy instead of repeating claim parsing. That makes the security rule discoverable, reusable, and testable. Start by naming the capability in one place. WorkItems.create is the policy name used by endpoint configuration. Permission is the claim type, and WorkItems:create is the claim value carried by an authorized principal. Keeping these strings together prevents subtle spelling differences from becoming security bugs. The permission describes an action rather than a job title. A role such as manager often gathers unrelated powers and changes meaning between teams. Capability language stays closer to the operation we are protecting. Constants are not a full permission catalog, but they are a clear first boundary. Register the named policy during application startup. Require authenticated user and require claim are built-in requirements, so we do not need a custom handler for a simple exact permission. ASP.NET Core will require a signed-in principal with at least one matching claim value. If a later rule needs database state, time, ownership, or several conditions, we can introduce a dedicated requirement and handler without changing the endpoint's policy name. Avoid hiding this registration across several extension methods too early. For a beginner checkpoint, the complete rule should be visible in one short block. The root group still requires an authenticated principal, so anonymous requests cannot reach either endpoint. The create endpoint adds the named capability policy. The list endpoint deliberately does not. Any signed-in user may list their own rows because the existing EF core query still filters by the server-derived owner identifier. Requirements compose, post must satisfy the group requirement and the create policy. Apply a policy as narrowly as the business rule allows. Protecting the whole group with the create permission would accidentally remove read access from users who are allowed to see existing work but not create more. The integration test registers a normal account, uses user manager inside the server to grant the permission, and only then logs in. Login creates the bearer principal from trusted identity data. The browser or mobile request never sends an isAdmin flag, permission field, or special header that application code blindly trusts. In a real product, an audited administration workflow or provisioning process would decide who receives this claim. The test uses user manager directly because permission administration is outside this episode. It still proves the real identity store, token creation, middleware, policy evaluation, endpoint, EF core store, and response. Do not collapse unauthorized and forbidden into one vague access error. A FA01 response means authentication did not establish a usable identity, so the client may need to sign in. A FA03 response means the caller is authenticated but does not meet this capability rule. Signing in again with the same permissions will not fix it. Both outcomes happen before the create handler runs, so no work item should be written. User interfaces can use the distinction to choose a login prompt or a clear not allowed message, while still avoiding sensitive detail about permission internals. The tests drive the real HTTP application. The anonymous client sends valid JSON without a token and expects unauthorized. A second account registers and logs in without the permission, then sends the same kind of request and expects forbidden. The normal helper grants the permission before login, and the existing create test continues to expect created. This three-way proof is more useful than unit testing a constant or calling an endpoint delegate. It covers identity, bearer token claims, authorization middleware, endpoint metadata, routing, persistence, and serialization as one observable security contract. A dangerous shortcut is checking a permission value supplied by the client. JSON fields, query strings, local storage, and ordinary headers are caller-controlled. Trusted claims must come from a session the server validates, and the issuer must control how they are granted. There is another production gotcha: bearer tokens are snapshots. Removing a stored claim may not change a token that was already issued. Keep access tokens short-lived, support refresh and revocation, rotate security stamps where appropriate, and require fresh or step-up authentication for sensitive operations. Log permission changes, but never log raw bearer tokens. We named the workItems.create capability registered a policy that requires the server-issued workItems create claim, attached that policy only to post, and preserved authenticated owner-scoped listing. 7 integration tests now pass, including the important distinction between anonymous unauthorized and authenticated forbidden. Policies keep security language out of handler branches and give richer requirements a stable home later. In the next episode, we will build the first Blazor create form, surface validation and authorization failures clearly, and keep the same tested API boundary underneath the user interface.